Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amrutangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us, peace be unto all. Friends, we are here today to celebrate Buddha's birthday. Buddha is worshipped as an incarnation of God, and his birthday, according to lunar calendar, fell on the 10th of this month. And his birthday is a thrice blessed day, as it's often said, because this is the day he was born. This is the day he attained illumination under the Bodhi tree. And this again the day he attained that Mahasamadhi. That means he gave up his body. All of them happened on the same day according to lunar calendar. Buddha's life was one of compassion for suffering humanity. He could identify himself with the sorrow of everyone. When we see in Buddha's teachings that there is sorrow everywhere, it's not a pessimistic teaching, it's a realistic teaching. When he saw sorrow, he could identify himself with it. He internalized that sorrow. That's the specialty of an incarnation of God. He could feel sorrow with capital S, if you will like, because sorrow of everyone, he could identify himself with it. And he was seized with his one problem, sorrow, and how to find solution to this sorrow. He did not encourage any discussion on metaphysical doctrines. What is God? What is soul? Is there a God? Is there a soul? Buddha didn't have any use for all these doctrines. But he had this one theme. He had love for humanity, compassion for humanity. He identified with the sorrow of everyone. And he resolved to find a way out of sorrow. Swami Vivekananda was a great admirer of Buddha from his very younger days. He held him to be the ideal example of a karma yogin. This karma yogin who does work for work's sake. Swami Vivekananda spoke of two kinds of karma yoga. Work for work's sake, and the second is work for God's sake. And he said for the majority, the second, work for God's sake, will facilitate their spiritual progress. Work for work's sake. You don't need to believe in God, you don't need to worry about any metaphysical doctrine, but just do good, because it is good to do good. And Swami Vivekananda held Buddha to be the ideal exemplar of this kind of karma yoga. I quote from Swami Vivekananda. I would like to see moral men like Gautama Buddha, who did not believe in a personal God or a personal soul, never asked about them, but was a perfect agnostic, and yet was ready to lay down his life for anyone, and worked all his life for the good of all, and thought only of the good of all. Well has it been said by his biographer, in describing his birth, that he was born for the good of the many, for the happiness of the many, as a blessing to the many. He did not go to the forest to meditate for his own salvation. He felt that the world was burning and that he must find a way out. Why is there so much misery in the world? Was the one question that dominated his whole life. So we'll reflect on some incidents from Buddha's life and also reflect on his teachings today on this important day. Buddha was born to Shuddhodana. He was a king. And Maya Devi, that was his mother's name, in a place called Kapilavastu, now in Nepal, in 563 BC. He was called Siddhartha Gautama. Siddhartha was his first name, Gautama the last name. Soon after she gave birth to this boy, the queen died. And this Buddha, this child, was brought up by her sister called Prajapati. Soon after Buddha was born, astrologers predicted he will become a world conqueror as a king or a world redeemer as a monk. And Buddha would renounce the world when his heart was touched by human suffering. So this was the prediction. And Buddha proved himself courageous in all the exercise of the body and the mind, unsurpassed by anyone. At times he had a tendency to be quiet and contemplative. His father was always aware of this prediction that Buddha would become a world-conquering king or a world-redeeming monk, and he would renounce the world when he saw misery. So the king made sure that Buddha was not witness to any kind of misery. Buddha's father, Shuddhodana, for miles together outside the palace, he ensured that gardens were laid out and Buddha saw only the good side of things. At 19, Buddha married Yashodhara, and when he was 29, Rahula was born to him. Though the king tried his best to see that Buddha did not witness misery of any kind, once Buddha, when he was 29, Rahula had been born to him. Till then, it's something to be reflected on. This king trying to make sure that till Buddha turned 29, he lived in some kind of a sanitized world. He didn't see misery of any kind. But then the time came, because Buddha was not going to be an all-conquering king, but a world-redeeming monk. We read in the Bhagavad Gita, a seeker should always perceive the evil of birth, death, old age, and sickness. He should perceive the pain associated with all this. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshanudarshanam. You find this in the 13th chapter, 8th verse. So though the father had laid out gardens for miles around the palace, so that Buddha saw only the pleasant sights of life, Buddha went one day on an outing in his chariot with his charioteer Channa. And then Buddha saw first an old man, and then a sick man, and then a dead body. I read from his biography. They met an old man by the wayside. The prince, seeing the bent frame, the wrinkled face, and the sorrowful brow, said to the charioteer, "Who is this? His head is white, his eyes are bleared, and his body is withered. He can barely support himself on his staff." Much embarrassed, the charioteer hardly dared to answer the truth. He said, "These are symptoms of old age. The same man was once a suckling child, and as a youth full of sportive life, but now, as years have passed, his beauty is gone, and the strength of his life is wasted." Siddhartha was greatly affected by these words of the charioteer, and he sighed because of the pain of old age. What joy or pleasure can men take, he thought to himself, when they know they must soon wither and pine away. While they were passing on, a sick man appeared on the wayside, gasping for breath. his body disfigured, convulsed, and groaning with pain. The prince asked the charioteer, "What kind of man is this?" And the charioteer replied and said, "This man is sick. The four elements of his body are confused and out of order. We are all subject to such conditions, the poor and the rich, the ignorant and the wise. All creatures that have bodies are liable to the same calamity." Siddhartha was still more moved. All pleasures appeared stale to him, and he loathed the joys of life. The charioteer sped the horses on to escape the dreary sight, when suddenly they were stopped in their fiery course. 4 persons passed by carrying a corpse, and the prince, shuddering at the sight of a lifeless body, asked the charioteer, "What is this they carry?" "There are streamers and flower garlands, but the men that follow are overwhelmed with grief." The charioteer replied, "That is a dead man. His body is stark, his life is gone, his thoughts are still. His family and the friends who loved him now carry the corpse to the grave." Buddha had not seen any of these for 29 years. He had not seen anyone sick, he had not seen anyone getting old, and he had not seen a dead person. The prince was full of awe and terror. "Is this the only dead man?" he asked, "or does the world contain other instances?" With a heavy heart, the charioteer replied, "All over the world it is the same. He who begins life must end it. There is no escape from death." With bated breath and stammering accents, the prince exclaimed, "O worldly men, how fatal is your delusion! Inevitably your body will crumble to dust, yet carelessly, unheedingly you live on." The charioteer, observing the deep impression these sad sights had made on the prince, turned his horses and drove back to the city. When they passed by the palaces of the nobility, Krisha Gautami, a young princess and niece of the king, saw Siddhartha in his manliness and beauty, and observing the thoughtfulness of his countenance, said, "Happy the father that begot you, happy the mother that nursed you, happy the wife that calls husband this Lord so glorious." The prince, hearing this greeting, said, "Happy are they that have found deliverance. Longing for peace of mind, I shall seek the bliss of nirvana." And handing her his precious pearl necklace as a reward for the instruction she had given him, he returned home. So the moment had come for Buddha. He knew that this world is not all that his father wanted him to take to be, but the world consisted of sorrow. And then and there, on that day, that night, the prince just left his wife, child, kingdom, everything. His mother was no more, of course. His father, he left everyone, and then he took a chariot, and at some point got down from the chariot and asked the charioteer to get back to the kingdom. And Buddha just wore just bare minimum of coarse clothing. Then he had a vision of a Shamana monk. That monk, when the prince was pondering on the problem of evil, this monk appeared before him. "Where dost thou come, and who art thou?" asked the prince. The Shamana said, Shamana means a monk. "Troubled at the thought of old age, disease, and death, I have left my home to seek the path of salvation. All things hasten to decay. Only the truth abideth forever. Everything changes, and there is no permanency. Yet the words of Buddhas are immutable. I long for the happiness that does not decay, the treasure that will never perish, the life that knows of no beginning and no end. Therefore, I have destroyed all worldly thought. I have retired into an unfrequented dell to live in solitude, and begging for food, I devote myself to the one thing that is needed. So Buddha left his home, and he left his wife, his newborn child, his princely life when he was 29. And he returned 6 years after his enlightenment, when he was 35. And then he preached for 45 years. He was 80 years. He lived 80 years. Buddha, as soon as he left home, left his palace, he sought enlightenment from several teachers, but he was not satisfied with the teachings of any of them. He witnessed animal sacrifice offered in temples that deeply moved him. He said, if offering animals to God would win you heavenly felicity, you can get much more heavenly pleasure by offering a human being. So that was his feeling for the animals. Swami Vivekananda says, he was the only man who was ever ready to give up his life for animals, to stop a sacrifice. He once said to a king, if the sacrifice of a lamb helps you to go to heaven, sacrificing a man will help you better. So sacrifice me. The king was astonished, and yet this man was without any motive power. He stands as the perfection of the active type, and the very height to which he attained shows that through the power of work, we can also attain to the highest spirituality. So Buddha's sole aim was to find out the way out of misery, how to conquer misery. He practiced austerities for 6 years, along with 5 bhikshus, 5 monks, and did not see any solution to the problem. Buddha had grown very weak, and these bhikshus with whom Buddha practiced austerities, they believed in physical mortification. They denied themselves of even basic nutrition, just bare minimum. That's what they had. Buddha had grown very weak, and 6 years nothing happened to him. The biographer says Buddha touched his stomach, only to find what he touched was his spine. That was how weak Buddha had grown. And then Buddha thought, this physical mortification, denying yourself of food, is not the way to go beyond sorrow. So he accepted the rice milk offered by one blessed lady, Sujata, the eldest daughter of the chief herdsman living near his grove. So when Buddha accepted this rice milk from her, the 5 bhikshus who practiced austerities with him thought that Buddha was seeking a pleasurable life. So they left him. They turned away from him. Siddhartha leaves us to seek a more pleasant abode. That's what they thought. Then Buddha went his way. He sat under the Bodhi tree. Bodhi tree means the tree under which Buddha attained illumination. There he made a frightful resolve. In Sanskrit it goes like this. Ihasane shushyitu me shariram tvagasti mamsam pralayam chayantu aprapya bodham bahujanma durlabam nehasanat kayamataschalishyati. May my body shrivel up here. May my skin, bone and flesh perish. Without attaining that knowledge that is hard to attain after struggling for so many lives, this body shall not move from here. That was Buddha's resolve. Unless he attained illumination, this body would not move. The body could just wither away as it was. And of course, on his way to attaining illumination, he was tempted by Mara. Mara is nothing but Maya. Maya tried to tempt him, but in vain. He finally attained illumination on the very day he was born. And he became a Buddha. Buddha means the awakened one. Buddha means to know. Buddha, Bodhi, Buddhi, Bodha, all these come from the same root, Buddha, to know. And According to his biographies, he was immersed in that state for 49 days, 7 times 7 days after he attained that illumination. And then Buddha discovered the Four Noble Truths, the main teachings that Buddha gave. These Four Noble Truths we'll examine. The first Noble Truth is the existence of sorrow. Birth is sorrowful, growth is sorrowful, illness is sorrowful, and death is sorrowful. Sad it is to be joined with that which we do not like. Sadder still is the separation from that which we love. And painful is the craving for that which cannot be obtained. That is the first noble truth. That means sorrow exists. The second noble truth is the cause of suffering. There is sorrow. There is cause for this sorrow. The cause of suffering is lust. The surrounding world affects sensation and begets a craving thirst, which clamors for immediate satisfaction. The illusion of self originates and manifests itself in a cleaving to things. The desire to live for the enjoyment of self entangles us in the net of sorrow. Pleasures are the bait, and the result is pain. The third noble truth is the cessation of sorrow. He who conquers self will be free from lust. He no longer craves, and the flame of desire finds no material to feed upon. Thus it will be extinguished. The fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path that leads to the cessation of sorrow. There is salvation for him whose self disappears before truth, whose will is bent upon what he ought to do, whose sole desire is the performance of his duty. He who is wise will enter this path and make an end of sorrow. Now the Eightfold Path. Once again, the first noble truth is the existence of sorrow. The second noble truth is the cause of sorrow. The cause of suffering is desire, lust, and desire to cling to things, desire, attachment, clinging to things. And the third noble truth is the cessation of sorrow. He who conquers his desire can conquer sorrow. And how to do this? That is the fourth noble truth. That fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path. That Eightfold Path, the first is Samyak Drishti, right view, the true understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Next is Samyak Sankalpa, that is second, right resolution, firm determination to live the life accordingly. Third, Samyak Vak, right speech, abstaining from lying, slandering, saying unkind words, and gossiping. Fourth, Samyak Kriya, right conduct, abstaining from killing, stealing, drinking intoxicants, and adultery. Fifth, Samyak Ajiva, right means of livelihood, abstaining from trade in arms, flesh, living beings, intoxicants, and poison. Sixth is Samyak Vyayama, that means right effort, banishing evil thoughts and entertaining good thoughts. Seventh, Samyak Smriti, right mindfulness, constant remembrance of the impermanence of the body-mind complex. Eighth, right concentration, Samyak Samadhi, practice of contemplation and meditation until the mind is perfectly tranquil. It is then that the truth shines. So this Eightfold Path combines sound reasoning, ethical conduct, and enlightenment. So Buddha doesn't mention anywhere the word God or I. Ethical disciplines for sure, sound reasoning, and contemplation, meditation, contemplation, not identifying yourself with anything else. Since Buddha didn't say anything about God, there is nothing to seek, there is nothing to be known that way. If you try to analyze Buddha's philosophy, the subject seeking something else, that's what happens in devotion. I seek God. I am the knower. God is to be known. So since Buddha eliminated God, so to say, in his philosophy. So the known is eliminated. And Buddha also didn't acknowledge the Atman. So the self, the knower. The knower is also eliminated in Buddha's philosophy. So what remains is knowledge. Buddha's teaching essentially consists in abiding as knowledge itself without seeking anything. Because in Vedanta you have this threefold difference, Triputi Bheda, the knower, the known, and the process of knowing, knowledge. In any kind of empirical knowledge, this threefold distinction is present. I see a table in front of me. I am the seer, the table is seen, and there is this sight, this process of seeing. Similarly, with respect to the other senses. So in Buddha's philosophy, we can see that he didn't say anything about God, so we don't have the known. And he didn't say anything about the Atman. He said the Atman doesn't exist. Buddha's Eightfold Path consists of sound reasoning, ethical conduct, and meditation. And his teaching essentially consists in dwelling as knowledge. And his teachings lay emphasis on complete self-abnegation and loving compassion for all living beings. And he himself was a personification of both. Two merchants by name Tapussa and Ballika came traveling on the road nearby. When they saw Buddha, majestic and full of peace, they approached him respectfully and offered him rice cakes and honey. Buddha accepted their offering and taught them the way of salvation. These two merchants became Buddha's first lay disciples. Immediately after he attained enlightenment, Buddha debated within himself whether or not he should teach the dharma, that means the way out of sorrow, to others. He was concerned that humans were so overpowered by ignorance, greed, and hatred that they could never recognize the path, which is subtle, deep, and hard to grasp. However, a divine being descended from heaven and told him, there are some beings that are almost pure from the dust of worldliness. If they hear not the doctrine preached, they will be lost. But if they hear it, they will believe and will be saved. Buddha relented and he agreed to teach. He then traveled to what is called Deer Park in Varanasi, northern India, where he set in motion Dharma Chakra, the wheel of Dharma, Dharma Chakra Pravartana, that's what you say in Sanskrit. He set in motion the wheel of Dharma by delivering his first sermon to the 5 companions with whom he had sought enlightenment. He met the 5 bhikshus who had deserted him, and when he approached them, the bhikshus, first, when they saw him from a distance, they thought, oh, here is the person who left us, and they thought they won't show him any reverence whatsoever. But as he approached them, they were completely overpowered by Buddha's countenance, his peace, and the bliss that he radiated from himself. And they became his disciples. When they saw that Buddha could conquer the way out of sorrow, so they wanted to know the way. And Buddha delivered his first sermon to these companions with whom he sought enlightenment. Together with him, these 5 bhikshus formed the first Sangha organization. Sangha means the monastery, the company of Buddhistic monks. And the 5 bhikshus take 3 solemn vows, which we saw, the vows being sung just now. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. We'll briefly reflect on those vows. First is Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. To Buddha I look in faith. He, the perfect one, is holy and supreme. Buddha conveys to us instruction, wisdom, and salvation. He is the blessed one who knows the laws of being. He is the Lord of the world, who yoketh men like oxen. The teacher of gods and men, the exalted Buddha. To Buddha will I look in faith. I take refuge in him. Next is Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. To the doctrine will I look in faith. Well preached is the doctrine by the Exalted One. The doctrine has been revealed so as to become visible. The doctrine is above time and space. The doctrine is not based upon hearsay. It means come and see. The doctrine leads to welfare. The doctrine is recognized by the wise in their own hearts. To the doctrine will I look in faith. Next is Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. To the community will I look in faith. The community of Buddha's disciples instructs us how to lead a life of righteousness. The community of Buddha's disciples teaches us how to exercise honesty and justice. The community of Buddha's disciples shows us how to practice the truth. They form a brotherhood of kindness and charity. Their saints are worthy of reverence. The community of Buddha's disciples is founded as a holy alliance in which men bind themselves together to teach the behests of rectitude and to do good. To the community will I look in faith. So Buddha gave his first sermon. After he instructed these disciples, he gave his first sermon in a place called Saranath, that's near Varanasi. You can see there is a huge Buddha temple in that place. Varanasi is Kashi, and from there, it's probably an hour's drive or two. You can go to the place even now. And then Buddha visited his father, his wife, his child, 2 years after his enlightenment. And then the wife, she was no less noble. She lived an austere life after Buddha left her. She didn't have any use for the royal pleasures. She used to sleep on coarse bed and she just wore coarse garments. And when Buddha came, the wife sent the son to ask him for his inheritance. And Buddha said he didn't have worldly things to give him, but he had these 4 noble truths, and he taught him the way to enlightenment. And Rahula, this young boy, also became part of the Sangha. Now, before we conclude, we'll examine a set of questions and answers. When Buddha was in a place called Jetavana, a divine being appeared before him as a Brahmana and asked him questions. And Buddha answered those questions. And these questions and answers bear reflection by all of us spiritual seekers. On a certain day, when the Blessed One dwelt at Jetavana, the garden of Anathapindika, a celestial deva came to him in the shape of a Brahmin, whose countenance was bright and whose garments were white like snow. The deva asked questions which the Blessed One answered. What is the sharpest sword? The Blessed One said, a word spoken in wrath is the sharpest sword. What is the deadliest poison? Covetousness is the deadliest poison. What is the fiercest fire? Passion is the fiercest fire. What is the darkest night? Ignorance is the darkest night. The Deva said, who gains the greatest benefit? He is the greatest gainer who gives to others. Who loses most? He loses most who receives from others without giving a compensation. Which armor is invulnerable? Patience is an invulnerable armor. Patience. What is the best weapon? Wisdom is the best weapon. Who is the most dangerous thief? Evil thought is the most dangerous thief. What's the most precious treasure? Virtue is the most precious treasure. Who is the most successful in taking away by violence, not only on earth, but also in heaven? The soul can take away by violence, not only on earth, but also in heaven. What is the securest treasure trove? Immortality is the securest treasure trove. The Deva asked, what is attractive? Good is attractive. What is disgusting? Evil is disgusting. What is the most horrible pain? A bad conscience is the most horrible pain. What is the greatest enjoyment? Deliverance is the height of bliss. What causes ruin in the world? Ignorance causes ruin in the world. What breaks off friendships. Envy and selfishness break off friendships. What is the most violent fever? Hatred is the most violent fever. Who is the best physician? Buddha is the best physician. So these are the questions and answers that Buddha gave, which merit deeper reflection. And the last teaching that Buddha gave was to his disciple Ananda, Atma Deepo Bhava. Be a lamp unto yourself. You don't need to believe in a God, you don't need to believe in a soul, don't think someone else will come and help you, but have faith in yourselves and then seek enlightenment yourselves. When Buddha was 80 years old, he ate his last meal, which he had received as an offering by a blacksmith. Falling violently ill, Buddha instructed his attendant Ananda to convince the blacksmith that the meal eaten at his place had nothing to do with his passing, and that his meal would be a source of the greatest merit, as it provided the last meal for Buddha. So Atma Deepo Bhava. Of course, a couple of centuries after Buddha passed away, his teachings came to be codified as Pitakas, Tripitaka, the threefold basket. Buddha said, when he gave this teaching to Ananda, "Therefore, Ananda, be ye lamps unto yourselves. Betake yourselves to no external refuge. Hold fast to the truth as a lamp. Hold fast as a refuge to the truth. And whosoever, Ananda, either now or after I am dead, shall be a lamp unto themselves and refuge unto themselves, shall betake themselves to no external refuge, but holding fast as the refuge to the truth, shall look not for refuge to anyone else besides themselves. It is they, Ananda, among my bhikkhus, who shall reach the very topmost height, but they must be anxious to learn." By way of conclusion, I quote again Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda says, "Let me tell you in conclusion a few words about one man who actually carried this teaching of Karma Yoga into practice. That man is Buddha. He is the only prophet who said, 'I do not care to know your various theories about God. What is the use of discussing all the subtle doctrines about the soul? Do good and be good, and this will take you to freedom and to whatever truth there is.' He was, in the conduct of his life, absolutely without personal motives. And what man worked more than he? Show me in history one character who has soared so high above all. The whole human race has produced but one such character, such high philosophy, and such wide sympathy. This great philosopher, preaching the highest philosophy, yet had the deepest sympathy for the lowest of animals, and never put forth any claims for himself. He is the ideal Karma Yogi, acting entirely without motive. And the history of humanity shows him to have been the greatest man ever born, the greatest combination of heart and brain that ever existed, the greatest soul power that has ever been manifested. He works best who works without any motive, neither for money, nor for fame, nor for anything else. And when a man can do that, he will be a Buddha. And out of him will come the power to work in such a manner as will transform the world. This man represents the very highest ideal of Karma Yoga. Thank you.